welcome in the creator of the Kings Beat and our 1320 Kings Insider, James Ham. James, what's up, buddy?
What's going on, gentlemen? I think you're just used to being me and you. That's why you dumped Kenny there for a sec.
I think that's what I think that's what just happened.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
probably what happened for
it's like
sure. What's
the
up?
last 6 times. What's going on, man? How was Vegas?
It was hot. It was hot.
It
I
always is. It doesn't disappoint in that way.
I enjoyed it though. I had a good time. A lot of basketball. Like I was talking about it, I think on the show, but July in Las Vegas has just turned into basketball heaven. They got summer league. Sometimes they got the U.S. Olympic teams training camp,
Mm.
and the amount of AAU basketball. Like it's literally all July. Like every week in July, there's a new tournament.
Yeah, I've been there for quite a few of those events. Not for the AAU stuff, but yeah, I really miss going to those youth tournaments. Having my
Yeah.
son play soccer for so many years, it was just so much fun. Everyone, scrambling to get a Airbnb together, and pack a bunch of families into a house that's not built for that many people, and everyone comes over for dinner. It's all fun stuff. I miss all that stuff. I don't miss Vegas though. I don't miss Vegas heat, or the smoking, or just the clanging of bells and whistles at all times. Yeah,
The whole aura of the city, don't miss at all.
I miss the food. I miss the food. It's got good
Yeah,
food.
They do have
Yeah.
good food. Yeah. I love Vegas though. I enjoy my
Yeah.
time there. I was there for like
Boy, you didn't even say that. You didn't even say that with the same like roar from your stomach that you said, "I love LA."
well, I
Like,
mean,
it's total.
I do love LA. I don't love it more than Sacramento though.
Okay, thank you for throwing that in there.
There we go.
Question of the day, Hammer, based on the news that we broke here on ESPN 1320 last week. Is Vivek Ranadivé a good owner?
Oh, that's a tough one.
that's
No, I mean it is.
no, that's a perfectly fair answer. We've tried to lay out the pros and the cons as to why he is and where his shortcomings are.
Yeah, I mean financially he's fully invested. What he's done with the downtown area is just amazing, and some of that is city money, but a lot of that was his money and other owners' money, and so he has done some amazing things downtown. He is fully invested when it comes to the team. This is, while they aren't the highest payroll in the NBA, the Kings, put up 131 million dollar payroll last year. It's more than twice of what the Maloofs were putting in their last couple of years with the team. And of course, the salary cap has gone up and the television money went up. But he has put his money, into the product. But that's not what being an owner is about. That's not just what it's being about. I'd even say like his messaging, his social media, I mean his social justice stuff. He seems like in a lot of ways he's on the right side of history. But when it comes to being a just straight up an owner, if one of the other 35 owners that are part owners in that team were to take over, is there a possibility things would be different? Yeah. Is there a possibility they would have won sooner? Sure. So yeah, I mean, I think that's like a coach gets judged by his wins and losses. Players make all-star teams or don't make all-star teams by wins and losses. And then I think owners, they kind of get off the hook here when it comes to wins and losses. And in the last 9 years, the team hasn't been good. And, part of that blame, a good portion of that blame belongs on Vivek specifically in his handling of coaches, his handling of front office personnel, everything. So, yeah, it's 50-50. I don't know.
I came to the conclusion, James, that I can't call him a good owner because, to your point, the record matters. They haven't won anything since he's been in charge, and it's a basketball team. Like you gotta win if you want to just be successful with the dollar figures and how much money you make. Then go into another business. Your wins and losses. It matters here in this situation. So I can't call him a good owner, but I think this all came about because of the whole River Cat story, and people treated him like he was just some, death wish to the River Cats and this bad owner. I was like, well, I'm not going to call him a bad owner. I don't think he's bad. Like, he's all right. Like, he's cool. And then the other thing about that was it became a situation where is it just about wins? Like, because, and I would say, for some people, if it's just about wins, are you comfortable saying Robert Sarver is a good owner? You know
Oof.
what I'm saying? Like,
Yeesh.
exactly. You know what I mean? Like, if people think winning is all that matters, well, that's a championship contender now, and that's one of the slimiest guys in the game. So he's a good owner, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the question, it's a different question. If he is he a good owner? I think I would say, like, probably not. But is he a bad owner? And then that's where you start getting into the gray area. Like,
Mm,
I'm not sure. And like, I'll say this too. He doesn't. It's not intentional. Like, he wants to win, and I
mm,
think that that's something that's missed. Like, the things that he does, the decisions he makes, the inconsistency, the changing his mind, micromanaging, all that stuff. It's because he wants to win,
yeah,
but like, a lot of people want to win and don't know how and don't figure it out. It's not like everyone gets to win a championship, or this isn't Little League. Not everybody gets to play 3 innings. So I think it's an interesting conversation. If he's going to buy the River Cats, I don't think their current ownership is good. At least it wasn't the last time I was there. It wasn't considered good. Once the father died, who owned that team initially, like the Savage family, it fell into the hands of other people, and like, there were some rough times there for sure, where things were, employee wise, were bad. Like, I
mm,
know that I had people that I knew worked there, people who had it, like, there were crazy things that were happening all
mm,
over the place. Like, everyone's like, oh, you like some of the stuff that's going on. Like, the guy wearing the dinger suit had to, like, go, and he had like 6 other jobs, like, that he had to take care of during
yeah,
the day. Like, they had cut back their staff so far and all that stuff. And again, I've been clear. Like, the A's always put a really good AAA product on the field. The Giants don't really care about that.
mm,
So having it change hands and going from the A's to the Giants, it does hurt the brand,
yeah,
just because you're not going to win. And people still show up to see a winning product and to see prospects that are on their way to the big leagues a lot. And I think you had more of that feel with the A's than you do with the Giants.
And that's ultimately what we need to see out of all of this is a winning product
yeah.
from the Sacramento Kings, from Vivek Ranadivé, from everybody involved with this group. And we have all led ourselves to believe, and I think rightfully so, that it starts with De'Aaron Fox. And we had a comp earlier that I'm curious to get your opinion on, because I think we think a little bit differently about this player. This is a cross sport comp, and we discussed this in depth in the first hour. So for those who want to go back and listen to it, if you're just tuning in, it was an interesting discussion. Is De'Aaron Fox Kyler Murray?
Mm, damn, that's a good one.
No, I mean, it's interesting. You know, he's
Obviously, both very, very, very good ball players,
yeah.
but there's
Um,
little notes and caveats attached to both of them.
yeah, maybe. I mean, that's a good question. I would have to really, like, sit back and think about how we look at NFL, quarterbacks, and then compare, like, because if you look at the quarterback position and you compare that to the point guard position, then you will get to a point where Kyler Murray is a whatever top what point guard. I mean, quarterback in the NFL, and then you would kind of do the same thing when it came to Fox. Um, yeah, it's interesting. There are quarterbacks that have been in the league for a long time that haven't won, and I might look at that more than I would just straight up Kyler Murray. I mean, there are other quarterbacks, like before Matthew Stafford got to the Rams. He was a really good quarterback just on a horrendous franchise that's never been good. I mean, that the Lions are just so bad. But that's where I might start to make comps. Like, I want to see what he looks like on a different team, or I want to see him be able to take his team and make them different. and we haven't seen that yet. So we haven't seen him make his team different, and we haven't seen, so I'm not going to say he's like Tua. That wouldn't be kind, but again, like, there could come a time where De'Aaron Fox is on a different team, and he might look completely different in a winning situation if he ever finds that winning situation. And I kind of want to see what that would look like. I hope that it comes in Sacramento and that he can create that winning situation, but he's got to be part of that decision. He's got to be part of the reason why they win. And, we haven't got there yet.
Ironically, you take the last 2 off seasons, I guess, with Monty McNair, a new coach, a new change of roster. He's got that change, he's got that change with now, like going into opening day or opening night, far different franchise almost, from some of the decision makers all the way down to the people that he's playing with and who's coaching him in that locker room than it was opening night 2 seasons ago. So he's kind of got that right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Someone brings up, is he more like Derek Carr? And, that might be a good comp. Like, Derek Carr's always been a really good quarterback. Like, the numbers support that Derek Carr is a good quarterback. But he doesn't win. And so I think quarterbacks are judged in a very specific way, and it's always about winning. And at a certain point, a guy who averages 24 points a game should be considered an all-star level talent without any question. I mean, that historically, De'Aaron Fox's numbers are phenomenal the last 2 seasons, but he's not considered that. And, you can even do a player comp, put him right next to Donovan Mitchell and say, who's really been the better player the last 2 years? And you can say, well, it's Mitchell, but by what degree? And the difference is one of them has been on a winning franchise and one of them hasn't. Now, is it Fox's fault that he doesn't win? No, not 100%. Is he partially to blame? Yeah, like every player that steps on the court has some accountability for what's happened here. But, if you would switch those 2 players and put one in a better situation, what would they look like? Just like we talked about the other day, Damian, if the draft would have gone different, the 2017 NBA draft, and the Kings wouldn't have had the pick swap, and sitting at number 3 was Jason Tatum, and the Kings, what would have happened if the Kings took Jason Tatum and Boston took De'Aaron Fox? Would De'Aaron Fox be looked at completely differently? And I think the answer is probably yes. He would have had potential to be in a stable organization that built things around him and that, put a team that could win. And so it's really hard to be highly critical of the experience that De'Aaron Fox has had when that he's on his 4th head coach. He's on like his 5th defensive coordinator. He's played with 100 people or maybe it's 65 or 70, but it's hard to really put blame on one person when it's like, how much weight can one guy carry for a franchise?
Yeah, that I can't lie. The Derek Carr comp got me a little bit.
It's a good one.
Like, oh,
it's a good one.
It's not me. Whoever it was in the chatty house that came up with that. Yeah, I mean,
that's a really good one.
It's a good one.
Because
yeah.
I think, man, I mean, right down to I think Derek Carr is. I don't think the way I think Derek Carr is unfairly criticized. Like, he's a good quarterback. Again, I feel like sometimes maybe in the NFL you have to be great, and there's no other tier. You're either great or you're bad. Like, I feel like there are very few good quarterbacks. Like, Derek Carr is a good quarterback that the Raiders have decided to stick with. I'm really excited for the Raiders season, by the way. We haven't talked much about that. I'm really anxious to see how all of this stuff that they did in the offseason pops. But that's a great comp. That's a good one. That one stuck me a little bit.
I'd even say this really quick because I know we got to go to break here. But
no, we're good.
No, we got
okay. Okay, but we're about to see Derek Carr with Devontae Adams. That's the best offensive player he's ever played with, bar none. It's not even close. He's the best offensive player Derek Carr's ever played with. It's the same exact thing with De'Aaron Fox. He's playing with Sabonis this year. This is the best player he's ever played with. Not even remotely close. The best player he's ever played with. They both got new coaches. Both of those coaches are probably the best coaches that they've played under. This is a moment where both of them have to put up or shut up. It is that moment. It's that moment where this is your opportunity to be something you haven't been before and find success in a different way. And it's up to you to find it and to do it. Yeah. So, yeah, interesting stuff.
Still talking Kings for sure, but you talked about Devontae Adams being the best player Derek Carr ever played with. And then I thought about, yeah, you're probably right. And I was like, Crabtree? And then I thought about Crabtree getting in a fight with Aqib Talib. That was a scene.
Ooh, yeah.
That was a scene. That's one of them scenes you don't see often in football. For all the trash talking and physical sport, no, they really fought on the field. That was nuts.
Yeah,
that's it.
Well, well, that and like people bring up Derek Waller and Waller is probably in like NBA terms, he's a tight end. He's still the equivalent of like a Harrison Barnes. He's a very, very good tight end, and he might be one of the better tight ends in the league. But at the same time, like there's something different about having a wide receiver, or he's never handed the ball off to a Christian McCaffrey or someone like that.
Yeah.
Just like a lightning bolt that changes everything. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't usually do a bunch of go back and forth between football and basketball. I'm sure we could come up with baseball comps as well with Fox. Yeah. Anyway.
So one of the things when we can touch on the Kyler Murray and Fox comp too, because we spent the whole segment on that. So we'll come back to that a little bit. But one of the things that is always talked about, or Damien asked me, was he asked me, he said, do you feel that Cliff Kingsbury has gotten the most out of Kyler Murray? I said yes. And he says, well, that's Mike Brown's job with De'Aaron Fox now. Do you think it's that simple, or is this more on De'Aaron Fox to get his game where it needs to go to get this franchise to another level? Is it more on him, or does Mike Brown have to figure out a way to connect with De'Aaron Fox more?
I think it's a little bit different in the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, Kingsbury pushed for them to draft Kyler Murray, and that was a huge gamble to draft him where they did, to do what they did, that whole entire situation. So he put all of his eggs in that basket. I think Mike Brown is stepping into a situation where he, like every other coach, has to figure out a way to connect with De'Aaron Fox and to get more out of De'Aaron Fox, specifically on the defensive end. And, so in that way, yeah, I mean, his success is tied to him in the same way that Kingsbury's is, but he didn't make that decision. That wasn't his guy. So if Mike Brown said, hey, I want you to go out and trade for this player right now, then that's where, we could say, well, he's putting all of his eggs in this basket. And we've seen that with some NBA coaches where, they do get behind one guy. I'd even say like Mike Brown was a guy who was brought in like early in LeBron's career to like get LeBron over the hump, to get LeBron through the early stages and into contention stage. And he did a really good job of that, even though they never really built the team. So, I mean, that guy, the fact that he went to the finals with, like the second best players like Zydrunas Ilgauskas and like Boobie Gibson and like that entire roster, you're looking at like, wait a sec, this team went all the way to the finals? Like, not good at all. So, yeah, I think Mike Brown is that guy who's really being brought in at the right time to take a team. Normally you see a team that's like a 6 seed and you need someone to take them over the top. I think the Kings could be looked at as a team that probably should have been better than their record the last 3 or 4 years. Maybe there's 1 year where they just gave everything up and like they took a huge step back. But this is a guy that's trying to take you over the top, but into the playoffs over the top, as opposed to, taking a team that's a good team and making them into a great team. That could be step 2-3 years from now. But right now he's being taxed with sort of taking a guy over the top and making him taking a franchise over the top and making them just better than they have been, more stable than they have been.
It's funny, like heading into this year, like I think we can all comfortably say we expect De'Aaron Fox to be the Sacramento Kings best player pretty close to it. I also feel like De'Aaron Fox is like the team's biggest wild card because we just don't know how the season is going to start from. We don't know what version of De'Aaron is going to start this season. If it's the guy who ended the last 2 years, before, sickness and broken hand and all that stuff, like the guy who, when he was playing, was like, whoo, the post Sabonis trade where it was like, yo, he's unlocked. The hug heard round the world. Like, is it that guy or is it the guy who, in games 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 last year just looked like a shell of himself?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much riding on De'Aaron Fox this year, and he knows that. We're not speaking crazy here. He knows that. Every coach that's come through here said we'll only go as far as De'Aaron takes us. That's it. Like wherever he goes, we go. And if he can't get us there, he can't get us there, and we're not going to make it.
Sorry, that just sparks it. Is this team poorly constructed for us to all think like that? Because it's like it's one thing to think about that for like Giannis or LeBron or like one of those tier players, but to go, oh, the Kings will only go as far as De'Aaron Fox is going to go. Year 6 into this, it's like, yo, maybe you should have built out this team a little bit differently.
Oh, totally. I mean, this team has been like ill constructed for years. Like totally, it's been not built the right way at all. It's like when you have a player like De'Aaron, you need long athletic defenders all over the court. You need 3-point specialists to space the floor. Even like when you get Sabonis, it's the first passing big man he's ever played with. So yeah, it has been ill constructed, and that goes for everyone from the day that he got taken. But at the same time, like if you're Vlade Divac and you draft Marvin Bagley should have been the perfect fit. He should have been. So like if we start blaming for the way that people didn't advance in their careers or petered out or regressed greatly, a guy like Buddy Hield, if you're going to design a player to play next to De'Aaron Fox, it would be a floor spacing, 3-point shooting madman, a guy just who has unlimited green light. That's what you had.
Right.
But the fact that he couldn't play defense, the fact that he made mistakes all the time, there's some things that didn't work out. So I would like to say that, like, overall, the thing's been poorly constructed. Well, I think where the real poor construction comes in is that you never went and got that player that was way better than everybody else on the court. So you've got Fox, and then there's always been a pretty steep drop-off to, player 2, 3, 4, 5. Like there's a steep drop off, and the Kings have never had an honest to goodness second man at all to put next to him. And now I think they do have a second man, but you also have, a bunch of third and fourth options that probably fit better than any group of players before. If Harrison Barnes is on this team, he's a knockdown 3-point shooter from the corner. Herter, knockdown 3-point shooter. Monk, knockdown 3-point shooter. Keegan Murray is a guy who can space the floor and do all kinds of things as well. And he's the guy you're kind of banking on, that you got to get to the 6, 7, 8 seed. But then how do you get better after that? And one of the ways you get better is by Keegan Murray getting much better and taking big steps. So you can only count on Fox and Sabonis to take you so far. And again, like we always talk about, Fox has got to take you to, like, we only go as far as Fox goes. Well, that it isn't fair. It never has been fair, especially if you're not going to put players. If you're going to go to him and say, hey, give us a list of 5 guys you'd like to go get, and we'll try to get you 1 or 2 of them. They never did that, and Fox never had any interest in doing it. So I just kind of feel like Fox has been along for the ride up until this point when it comes to, like, player personnel and the direction of the players around him. I think he was a little bit more engaged on that this summer, and that's good. He's a little bit more engaged on the coach that they hired as well.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth when you talked about it was supposed to be Marvin Bagley. That was supposed to be when Fox was drafted, and I still kind of feel this way about him. He scores a little better than I thought he could, but I thought the perfect scenario would be this guy is 19-9, and then you go get a guy that, in this case it was Bagley, so it was a big man, but a guy that was going to average 22 points a night and be your leading scorer. Like, I didn't ever think De'Aaron Fox was meant to be the leading scorer on the team. and that was the role that was best for him. It was supposed to be Bagley, and it wasn't him. He missed. He missed. But like you said, now you got Sabonis, and you got different shooters and guys that can create their shot around them. Fox probably still has to be the team's leading scorer in that respect, so it doesn't fit that role. But I think they're built a little better before around him. And when you talk about poor construction, I think it's okay for what they're talking about to have De'Aaron Fox be the guy that it kind of revolves around, right? Like if you're talking Giannis or Kawhi or something, you're talking championship level. If it's like we're only going to go as far as De'Aaron Fox goes when you talk about championship, yeah, that's doing too much. Like you're constructed poorly. But when you talk about we're trying to be a 6 to 8 seed and we're only going to go as far as De'Aaron Fox goes, I think he's good enough to have those type of expectations on him, and for the team to look at it that way. I think that's fair given his talent level.
Yeah, see, it's funny you brought something up too there that I thought was interesting. When he was young, I always thought sort of the ceiling of him was John Wall. So I was always waiting for the 20-8, and we kind of got there, and then all of a sudden he went up to 25, and it's like, oh, I didn't see that.
Right.
But part of that was because the Kings were so bad that he had to. He had no other option but to be that player. And so yeah, that there was a time where you thought, okay, he can be something much different than I thought he could be. And even at this point, like, do we even really know what his ceiling is? Like, I don't think we do. Like, I mean, I think his floor is 20 a game, but could his ceiling still be 27, 28? I don't know. It's possible. If he starts shooting his 3-point shot like he did a couple of years ago, where he hit 37%, then yeah, his ceiling is probably 28 points, maybe a little bit more. Like he could be one of those guys that he takes a step up again, and you're like, all right, this is who we thought you would be.
It's good stuff. James Ham, 1320 Kings insider, creator of the Kings Beat. We'll come back. We'll talk more Kings basketball. We'll talk more NBA basketball when we return here at Steelo and KC. Brought to you by McQueen and the Violet Fog, the smoothest gin in the world, handcrafted in Brazil, here on ESPN 1320. Clear.
Hey, James, you would probably know this. Can the baseball stadium, Sutter Health Park, can that be converted to a Major League Baseball
No.
type stadium?
When it was built originally, there was 2 design plans from what I remember. One design plan was so a third deck could be added, the outfield bleachers could be changed over, and you could build it to convert it to a Major League stadium. In the construction phase, either they ran out of money or they just realized that it was so cost prohibitive that they stopped, and they didn't do the true build out that they could have done. And so I do not believe that it can be. I mean, could it be retrofitted? Maybe. But it was initially, the original plan was to make it so it could be expanded to like a 35,000 seat capacity building. And it just never was. It wasn't built that way. So whether it was like the level of I-beam construction, as far as like the girders and everything, they just didn't build it so it could be stacked on again, from what I remember. So I'd be interested. Yeah.
I saw the proposal for. Did you see the thing for Soldier Field? I think it was the mayor of Chicago. Like, is it that simple? You just So there's a proposal, like, because I think it was the Bears. I don't know if it was the Bears or someone who represents the Bears. Just bought like $160 million worth of land nowhere near Chicago to build a new. The belief is to build a new stadium. Mm-hmm. And the mayor I think it was the mayor in Chicago was like, no, let's just reconstruct it. The renderings looked incredible, but it was like, so that's all you have to do is just like redo the end zone, and you could put a dome on Soldier Field. Like that's all it takes. Wow.
Okay, so remember that Oracle, they basically put a shell over the top of Oracle. Like it was much smaller, and they put a shell over and expanded it, and built like a new roof and everything. Like they built that thing out. So
Oh,
I
in Oakland, Oracle
in
Arena.
Oakland, yeah, Oracle Arena. So I actually think that there's a possibility. I mean, it would come down to whether they engineered the footings and stuff to take on more weight. That's what it would come down to. So would you have to tear up like giant sections in like down the first base line to like behind the home plate and add in like major like 30-foot like concrete pylons into the ground to support the weight to go up. So, but I think what I mean though is there a possibility that you could shell out over the top and just build out over the top? It would be more expensive than what it would have been if you would have built it originally to be expanded. But yeah. Anyway,
Anything
I would
for
love it.
sophomore in 2022.
Yeah. No, I think so. And look, if Vivek wants to go all in and buy that, and then wants to have a conversation about moving the A's up, like I'd be okay with that. Like you cannot get any worse than Fisher and the group that are running the A's now. Like as far as ownerships go, there's nothing worse.
But are
Like,
they actually selling the team or just trying to move it?
They're just trying to move it.
no, yeah,
Anything about Fisher wanting to sell?
no, I haven't heard that either. But like at a certain point, they've done so much damage. You know, it's like the Maloofs, except for the Maloofs, it wasn't truly intentional until it became intentional, until they were like jabbing the city, like, you know, trying to kill them with 1,000 paper cuts. But before that,
Sorry, Ham. Hang on. We're coming back.
all right.
There's no reason to not bring this conversation to the air. We started talking construction as we normally do with James Ham. That's up there right below the Sacramento Kings when it
I
comes
knew
to
he would
James
have
Ham.
the answers.
The construction beat is coming pretty soon. James, this
Like,
construction
construction.
homeimprovementbeat.com is on
That'd
the
be
way.
awesome.
See, it's just videos of James is like building stuff. Like James is trying to figure out how to enclose the room that he does his podcast and radio shows in now. And look at, like, for those who are watching, he's looking off in the distance because he's thinking about how he can do all of this and make it work.
Oh, I'm making hidden bookshelves. That's what I'm doing. But that pop open and like it swings open, and then my speakeasy's down inside. Yeah.
See,
I
there it is.
absolutely love the construction beat. That's hilarious. Put it on
Yeah.
a shirt.
Yeah.
The construction beat with James Ham on the way. But we were talking about like how the conversation was in the direction of like how how could a baseball stadium be built here in Sacramento, and the talk of Vivek Ranadivé and the Sacramento River Cats, and is there a chance to go after the A's? And James, we'll just pick up right there with the question I just asked you. To the best of my knowledge, like the A's aren't for sale. The A's may be moving. The A's may be trying to move, but they're trying to be moved with the same owners, not sold to somebody else.
Yeah, they're trying to move with the same owners, but again, at a certain point, I mean, the A's owners are like the third richest owner in Major League Baseball. Yeah. They just don't care. They're just bad owners. So, again, you talk about bad owners. That's a horrible owner. I mean, they need to be called out every step of the way. They're absolute trash. They won't even like step in front of a microphone or do a real interview. They're just bad owners who won't put money into the product and don't deserve the product. So that's at the end of the day, like when you own a professional franchise, you are a steward for the franchise. That's what you are. You are someone who the franchise will outlive, because franchises don't typically die. People do. Mm-hmm. And so you hope that you have a lineage that, your kids will take over and everything else. But there are people out there that buy teams to make money. And it feels like that's what's happened with the A's. And even if they move down to Las Vegas, it would be to get a mostly publicly funded, like building that would increase the value of their product, and then they would be able to either sell it or it would just be a giant thing in their portfolio. Again, people forget when Vivek bought the Kings, it was like a $565 million valuation. And the Maloofs had a bunch of debt on top of that. So they didn't just walk away with like 535 or 565 million bucks. They owed the city of Sacramento like 77 million. They had a bunch of debt. On top of, and then they had a bunch more on top of that, like hiding in other spots. Like they poorly managed their money. But the franchise is now worth over 2 billion, and we're talking about 9 years. So the investment of Vivek and all those people put in, they've made their money back. It's quadrupled. Now, did they put money out of their pocket to help that happen? Sure. Just like I bought my house, I added 1,700 square feet, and my house I bought at one point, and now it's maybe 3 times what I bought it for. But that's because I put a lot of sweat equity and a lot of, I built onto it. It's the same thing with the Kings. The Kings, Vivek bought the team, and then he like did the whole swap and all the land trading and all that stuff, and they got that. They built the arena, and now part of the reason why it's worth 2 billion as opposed to like 1.6 billion is because they built the arena and all the stuff on top of it. And so yeah, they've done a good job of like, again, as far as an investment, building out the thing, but that's just not what the A's have done. The A's have just been a hot mess from the beginning.
Yeah, Fisher is terrible, and in some circles they like to call Fisher feels like he hit a lick when he got the A's. Like, oh, I could just make money off it, and nothing's going on. This is great. I don't have to do anything, and I'm making money. So, yeah, he's terrible. He is a terrible sports owner once again, and we got a guy Miho who just says everything negative about the Kings in here. He talks about the A's have made the playoffs the last 4 or 5 seasons. Does that mean Fisher's a good owner? Back to our original conversation. Just because they go to the playoffs, does that mean he's a good owner? Absolutely not. So I would love for that dream. Look, mind you, I don't think it's happening at all. I think Vivek's buying the River Cats to buy the River Cats. I think that's all that is. But I would love for the Major League dream to come true here in Sacramento. And somebody asked the question, if the A's came to Sacramento, what would I do? I would love both teams equally. Okay? All I do.
He'd buy the split hat.
I'd buy the split hat. I'd be like Spike Lee. Right? He's from Brooklyn. He was always a Knicks fan. But then the Nets went to Brooklyn. He's like, I got love for the Nets. It's still Knicks, but I got love for that. I'd have love for the A's. It's still Giants, but I'd have love for the A's.
That's funny. Yeah, it always reminds me. Jim Cosmore would like to wear the split A's and Giants hat just to be a contrarian, just to like get a rise out of people. And it always like, I'm gonna punch you. You can't wear that hat. You can't wear that hat anywhere. That's disrespectful. Yeah. And someone asked earlier, Cosmore and his family moved to Nashville, Tennessee. So they just recently moved. So good luck to Coz on a new adventure in Nashville, Tennessee.
Maybe he can go to SummerSlam.
Yeah,
maybe he can, and James can go with him. Like James, I'm sure will be excited to be at SummerSlam. James, do you know what SummerSlam is?
Is it WWE?
There you go. Okay. There it is.
So unsure the answer to.
Well, he probably know. I'm dealing with these two idiots. It's probably wrestling, for God's sakes.
Wrestling? Is that what this is?
The wrestling beat coming to.
That's right. That's right.
Mark Jones said to us yesterday, he thinks this team's good enough to get into the 6, 7, or 8 spot. Mark a little too high on the team, or is that just all things breaking right?
They're good enough to make to the 6, 7, 8 spot. They're bad enough to make it to the 9th, 10th, 11th spot. I don't think they can be worse than 11.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. Like I like Mark's optimism, and Mark was brought here, to be optimistic and to with the hopes that he was going to cover a good basketball team, and that hasn't happened yet. But yeah, I think we're looking at a situation where there's going to be at least 4 teams that don't care, that don't want to win. And, we've talked about that in the past, but, we're talking about the Spurs, we're talking about OKC, we're talking about Houston, and we're probably talking about Utah at this point.
Mhm.
And then after that, you got a bunch of teams that are lumped in together, and the Kings are part of that. And it's probably the 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 group. So the Lakers, the Kings, the Lakers, the Blazers, Pelicans, and I'm sure there's one other team that I'm just forgetting. But that group of teams are going to be, in that range. Can you get up to where like a Minnesota or a Dallas could be? Sure. Like things happen, injuries happen. I'm not convinced that Minnesota is like everything's going to work out like they believe it will. Yeah, but
That's my hot take. I think Minnesota jumps.
well, they're either going to
I
jump,
think
they're
that-
jump one way or the other. I think that's
Jump up or jump off.
yeah. Like I think they're either going to go way up or they're going to go way down. And we talked about this on the Kings beat, like the Donovan Mitchell thing. If you were the Kings, would you go chase Donovan Mitchell? And we talked about it for an hour straight. Me and Brendan yesterday. But I'll say the one difference between going all in on Donovan Mitchell and going all in on Rudy Gobert like Minnesota did is Minnesota gave up 4 first-round picks. They gave up like 3 rotational players. I mean, they gave up a whole bunch, right? Well, what is the return if it doesn't work and you need to trade Gobert? You're not getting that back. You're going to take 30 cents on the dollar in return. You might be able to get 1 or 2 first-round picks. But, if you let this thing play out 1 or 2 years, he all of a sudden is moving towards the backside of his prime, and you start looking at the money and just the modern NBA and how a big man like that works. Where if you go and make some drastic, crazy move and throw everything to go get Donovan Mitchell, well, 2 years from now, Donovan Mitchell is he's still under contract for another year and a half, 2 years, and you would still have the opportunity to go get 3 or 4 first-round picks for him again. So I think your investment is easier to recoup with a guy like Mitchell than it is with a guy like Gobert.
Yeah. And to that point, when you guys were talking about that, because I was listening to that a long hypothetical conversation, and I think Brendan asked about Keegan Murray, and you're like, yeah, there's no way he's even part of the deal. And I agree with you, James. Number one, like seeing hypotheticals, we're not in the negotiating room, so we don't know what's really going on. But if the Knicks, who look to be the front runner in the whole thing, if they're not having to part with RJ Barrett, there's no way I'm even thinking about Keegan Murray being involved in a Donovan Mitchell trade. Like you guys, I don't think he's getting traded to the Kings by any means. But yeah, Keegan Murray in any hypothetical, that's just a no-go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why we went through that exercise is very specific, just to, like, could they actually get him? And I think at the end of the day, the answer is probably no, right? But I try to be.
I don't know. The trade proposal you guys put up, I mean, it's about what they're going to get, because I don't think they're getting star for star in any trade that they get. Closest thing is Tyler Hero. And if they went with Tyler Hero, then they're not getting the picks that they want. So when you talk about Barnes, Holmes, maybe Davion or something like that, and a bunch of picks, I think that's in the vicinity of what they'd be getting.
Yeah, like with Miami, I don't think Miami has anything to offer. Like the problem that you have with Miami, they're always going to be good. So what use is it to go get first round draft picks from the Miami Heat? They're not good draft picks. They're not ever going to equal Donovan Mitchell. That's just not going to happen.
All right.
So you got to hope that Tyler Hero and then somehow turning those other picks into something would actually get you somewhere. I don't buy that either. So like, if I'm going to put together a trade, I'll just tell you the parameters of where I think the Kings would go, where I think the other team would ask for, and then like at the end of the day, I don't think the deal would happen, because the Kings could go 3 first round picks. They could go a couple of pick swaps. They could go Davion, Harrison Barnes, and then fill up the rest, the back end. And is that enough for Utah? And I don't know. But I'll still tell you, I've told you guys this a bunch of times. If I'm trading with any team in the NBA and it's coming to draft picks, I'm trading with the Sacramento Kings. Because I look at all of the picks that the Knicks have to offer, almost all of them are so heavily protected, and almost all of them dissolve into second round picks if they don't relay. So they have a Dallas pick, they have a Pistons pick, they have like a couple other picks that are actually on paper initially you're like, ooh, they could get that pick. But they're all so heavily protected. Like I think the Detroit picks are like top 18 protected for like 3 years and then they dissolve into 2 seconds. So again, it's tough to look at the packages and compare. But if I'm trading for with any team in the league, if I'm another like executive, how do I get Sacramento involved and how do I get their picks? I mean, we're 16 years of playoff drought. They're always in the lottery. Like, how do I get their pick? Because that's who I would like kind of circle.
How extensive do you think that conversation actually was?
I don't know. You know, like that conversation has probably happened like 4 or 5 times. So, I mean, the NBA, you kind of keep going back to it, saying, all right, well, you got anything? Let me, it's kind of like when I hit agents, I'll pay you here and anything, and we'll go back and forth. We'll, have some conversations back and forth. And then you come back around 2 weeks later, you hearing anything else? Like, that's kind of the way it goes. You're constantly checking in and saying, hey, where are we at with information? Like the Kings have been looking, they have been chasing a frontline starter for a while. Now, whether that happens or not, I have no idea. But I've also never had someone actually put a name attached to it, who that frontline starter is.
Right.
But like that's something that's happened for a long time. And we know they're still active. We know they're still trying to make one more substantial trade. Now, whether they can make that trade or not, who knows? They weren't able to last offseason, and it went all the way up until February. Maybe they're able to make that deal in February. I don't know. It really does depend on the other teams and where you're at in the standings and all that stuff. But yeah, I would still I'm kicking the tires on Donovan Mitchell. I'm seeing what it would take. Like, what is an honest, don't give me the fluff thing. Don't tell me you want Keegan. You want, I don't think that they would take De'Aaron. And that's just because they're not looking to
Well, the deal
stay
doesn't
afloat.
make sense if you have to trade De'Aaron, in my
No.
opinion. It only makes sense if they're both here together.
Right.
Well, and even then you can make the argument it doesn't make sense.
No, absolutely. But like if you're going to do it, I feel like it has to be with De'Aaron, or what move are you even making?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I fully agree. Like that's where when I do look at trades and I try to break them down and I try to be honest with people, like this is kind of the max the Kings could go. And this is a max that this is probably what Utah's asking for. Would they ask for Keegan Murray? Heck yeah, who wouldn't?
Mhm.
Are you going to get Keegan Murray? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
I agree. Hey, Ham, also on the Kings beat, you talked about what the Kings did this offseason and still having a lack of defensive-minded guys on this roster. They didn't do much this offseason to get those type of players on the roster. And basically the question is what everybody else is asking as well is, will there be enough improvement on the defensive end to compete? And here's something that I thought about. Maybe this is a lot of pressure on Mike Brown, and it's just, pie in the sky. Tell me if it is or not. But I think if you have guys, and I think you mentioned this, but if you have guys that buy into what Mike Brown is selling them and what he's preaching, the culture that he's trying to cultivate with this team on the defensive end, I think that may be good enough to be good enough on the defensive end with the group that they have. Because I look back at what he was able to do in Cleveland, and you mentioned some of the guys before, Bobby Gibson, Sasha Pavlovich, Mo Williams, Varejao. Varejao is a good defender, but it's not like he was Marcus Smart out there. He just understood what he was supposed to do out there and understood his role. So if you get guys that are able to do that, I think you can get a turnaround. I put the number with Damian anywhere between 12 and 18 ranked in the league defensively. I think you can I think Mike Brown can help them get there.
If they make it to 12 to 18, then they're the 6th seed.
For instance, the Chicago Bulls were 16th.
But last year?
Yeah. Well, this was points per game, points allowed, or something like that.
Okay, like defensive rating, they're much worse than that, I believe.
Mm.
Yeah, if they can get their defensive rating into, like you said, the 12 to 18 range, a lot of things have to go right first and foremost. But if they're that good, and their offense is as expected, then you're talking about a 6th seed. Like that's how good that team would be. The problem the Kings have is that they just went through a summer where they added, 3 rotational pieces, and they lost one of DiVincenzo, and I think you could make the argument that of those 4 players, DiVincenzo is the best defensive player. He's certainly the one guy that gets you steals. Like the Kings had 3 guys last season that averaged over 1 steal per game. And it was Fox at like 1.2, it's Tyrese Halliburton at 1.7, and it was Dante DiVincenzo at 1.5. So that's not good. Like the last season. So when I look at what Mike Brown did last season with the Warriors, what types of things are things that the Kings can actually do? And number one, I think the Kings are going to be an excellent rebounding team because they have Sabonis, and Sabonis is a wonderful rebounder. And they're going to end a bunch of defensive possessions because of Sabonis' ability to grab rebounds. So that's one thing. That's one way you get better. It's not getting yourself in like the offensive rebound world where the other team is hitting. You play great defense for 22 seconds. The team misses a shot, they get a rebound, and then hit a 3-pointer with 5 seconds into the shot clock. And so those are the things that you're trying to avoid if you're the Kings. They can't do the steal thing that happened last year. They don't have the players that are natural steal players, which is what the Warriors had a bunch of. But I still think that the Kings can be really good as a team defensive team. I think that Harrison Barnes can improve. I think De'Aaron Fox can improve. I think Davion Mitchell will play a bigger role and actually take a bigger step. Someone got angry that I compared his defense to Pat Bev, and in a discussion, and like you look at Pat Bev in his first year and Davion Mitchell in his first year, or what equated to Pat Beverly's first year is really his second year in Houston, and they're very similar. And the next year Pat Bev took a huge leap. I expect Davion to take a huge leap as well, where he figures out the defensive game at the NBA level. You can get better defensively. I just don't know how much better. And your offense has to be better, so your transition defense is better. Like there's a lot of things that go into improving your defense. And so I think it's a complicated question, but Mike Brown's got a lot of work in front of him.
18's not a crazy, that's below average.
From 27 though? And 30th the year before?
Yeah, but you're talking about 18, like you're not even talking about like an above average defensive team.
No, but you're talking about a team that doesn't have
OKC was 18th last year.
Well, yeah, but you're talking about a team that doesn't have an above average like defensive player outside of maybe Davion.
Yeah, I think Davion's above average, but he's not a starter.
But who else?
That's really about it. I mean, some people think that De'Aaron Fox may be that type of guy, but they don't have a lot of defenders. But 18 is like I said, that's below average or average at best. I don't think
they've got to be around there, like you would hope, but it's a lot of work, man. That's a lot of work for Mike Brown and his staff.
James, toughest question I'll ask you all day. Will the San Francisco Giants ever win another baseball game?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know, but the A's keep winning. What is going on? Like they're even going like Lou Trevino in the 9th, which is just them trying to lose, and even that's not working now. They're like 8-3 in their last 11? Like, what is happening? No, the Giants will never win another game.
And they'll never beat the sorry Diamondbacks again in life. What the hell is going on here? Farhan, you want to talk about Redfin?
Oh, the Redfin password is back. The Redfin password is back. Check out the Kings Beat. Become a premium subscriber for the kingsbeat.com now, because the off the record Deuces Are Wild chat takes place tomorrow, and you can only be a part of that if you're a part of the Kings Beat premium subscription. So head over to thekingsbeat.com, check out the Kings Beat podcast wherever you get podcasts from. Same